The biggest thing is water chemistry, and then winter. Winter
Yeah.
wreaks havoc on pool liners up here. On average, we get 4 to 6 feet of frost in the winter, and then you've got the frozen water on the inside of the pool. So there's a lot of stress on any type of pool, regardless of what it is. So, or it's not a matter of if it's going to leak; it's a matter of when it's going to leak.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Pool Guides podcast. I'm Christian with River Pools, a show that helps you gather all the information to make the best decisions long before you break ground on a swimming pool in your backyard. You might be listening from someplace warm today or watching from someplace warm, and if that's the case, the topic might throw you off because we're actually going to the Midwest for this episode, the North Midwest, where it's pretty dang cold in the wintertime, and the area is known for harsh winters, at least by my standards down here in Virginia. We're talking about frost going 4 to 6 feet into the soil. We're talking about heavy freeze-thaw cycles, and we're talking about what happens to a swimming pool when there's a lot of ice outside and inside of it during those winter months. Today's guide is Michael Bowers. He's the owner and operator of Pool Pros Wisconsin, and he's got 30 years of industry experience. Today's topic is going to help you make the right decision for the best pool if you live in an area known for having harsh winters. All right, Michael Bowers, thanks for coming on the show, man. We appreciate you taking some time to drop some knowledge on us to serve as a guide for those who are thinking about having a pool installed in their backyard. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me. It's a pretty nice day today. It's actually going to get up into the upper 30s, so it's warming up.
Upper 30s. We
Yeah.
are reaching the 50s today here in Virginia. And you tell everybody where you're located because it's relevant to this episode.
Good old Green Bay, Wisconsin, title town.
Yeah, it's cold up there, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Typically.
Yep.
Although if 30 is a heat wave, what's your typical temperature up there during the winter?
Usually probably low, this time of year, probably low 20s,
Okay.
somewhere right around there.
That's
So
cold
not
to
too
people
bad.
down in Virginia. That's really cold. Big time. Well, the reason this is relevant is because we are talking specifically about pools, the right type of pool for backyards in cold weather climates. And I think I'm gonna break the ice and say that all three types of pools, concrete, vinyl, fiberglass, can function in cold weather climates. But talk us through generally considerations, things that people need to know about when choosing a pool in cold climates.
Probably durability is the biggest key for up here because it gets so cold. On average, we get 4 to 6 feet of frost in the winter, and then you've got the frozen water on the inside of the pool. So there's a lot of stress on any type of pool, regardless of what it is. So ideally, when you're picking a pool, you're going to want to find something that is, more suitable for this climate.
And would you say you get 4 to 6 feet of frost? Are you talking like 4 to 6 feet down in the soil?
Yeah, 4 to 6 feet in the ground.
That's unbelievable. We
Yeah.
get nothing like that here in Virginia. But what does that do? What does that do to the pool shell itself? Or what does the pool need to be able to withstand specifically around that kind of frost? I mean, just talk me through that because again, that's different than the soil we have down here in Virginia.
Yeah, you definitely need a more robust pool when you're talking up here. You need a pool that's built to withstand the frost. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure from outside the pool, and then you have the pressure from inside the pool with the ice freezing and or the water freezing and expanding. So you need something that's really going to hold up well. But I would say the two pools that hold up the best in this climate, from what I've seen doing this for 29 years, is concrete and then fiberglass, with fiberglass, in my opinion, being the best.
Deep freezing can certainly test the durability of any type of swimming pool. But let's gain an understanding of what damage can actually happen if the water level is not right in your pool when the deep freeze happens. And so what's happening, everybody knows that water freezes, it expands. So you've got outward pressure being applied to the shell. I assume that's part of the issue. And then the same thing, as you're talking about the water freezing on the inside,
with the freezing water, as it freezes, it expands, and if you get that water level too high in the pool, it can actually expand up into like your track channel for an auto cover. If you have coping on the pool, your cantilever concrete, and there's always a potential that ice, the pressure from the ice building can, if it's the water level is high enough, it can get into that, cause damage to your coping, your cantilever concrete, track channels for your auto cover. So well, we winterize the pool, especially with the fiberglass pool. We don't want to go lower than the bottom of the skimmer. It's just typically recommended by the manufacturer. So the drawback is we usually close pools probably October, November, somewhere right around there, early part of November at the latest. And we lower the water level where we need it to, but it can rain after we're gone, and you can get snow, and then it can melt, and all that. Usually, if it's like a mesh cover, it trickles back into the pool. It can raise your water level before the pool actually freezes. So by the time your pool is getting ready to freeze, that water level, if it's above your skimmer, it could potentially expand up into, the coping or cantilever concrete of your pool and do some damage. So yeah, that's a big thing that we always try to hit home with our customers and just remind them that, hey, things are about to start freezing. Let's peel back your cover and just check that water level and drop a submersible pump in there and get it where you need it. And then maybe check on it again real quick before, that frost sets in and starts freezing and that water expands.
So I want to go into each type of pool here in a second and talk about pros and cons for each one in cold climates. But it sounds like the water level, if it goes too high, and regardless of pool type up there, you're saying the ice could expand and actually begin to pop up the coping, and you have problems in a variety of ways. So it's important. I would imagine you guys have these conversations with homeowners all the time. As you're choosing the right type of pool for your backyard, you also need to understand how to care for it going into and during the winter months. And how often do you see, damage as a result of winter? And do you see damage during the winter, or do you see it as things begin to thaw in the spring?
Usually we don't see it until we start opening pools and taking covers off. That's when you start noticing any of the damage that's happened. But as far as what we're seeing as far as damage throughout winter, it really doesn't seem to matter based on the type of pool, except for the vinyl pools. The big thing with the vinyl pool is the vinyl liner. It's pretty soft. If it's a newer one, it can get torn very easily. And when the pool is basically thawing, that ice might not thaw out perfectly smooth, perfectly straight. You might get some jagged edges on there, and that ice that's inside the pool can move around and potentially cut that liner. It may not be a major cut. It could poke a small pinhole that you might not notice is leaking for a while, but then that pinhole could eventually turn into something else. Water could seep behind the liner, slowly start to rust out the panels. So up here and in the cold, vinyl just don't seem to hold up, or they're not really designed to withstand the climate that we have up here. It's
So melting ice can lead to damages that are unique to vinyl liner pools. But the big thaw in the spring can lead to issues that need to be understood long before construction begins. Before you go into that, though, I do want to sort of add a little more context to your bias, right?
Yeah.
You only install fiberglass, but just real quickly walk us through, your experience personally with vinyl, and then go into the installation issues that typically lead to problems.
Yeah, well, we've built probably thousands of vinyl pools over the years. We started doing it. Well, I started building pools in '97. I started the company in 2003. And even when we were doing above ground pools, they still have vinyl liners. So we were still seeing the same issues with vinyl lined above ground pools as you do with the vinyl in ground pools. The ice can move around as it's thawing. It can move around inside the pool and do damage to it over the winter. So that's typically the big drawback to vinyl in this area. While it usually comes in at a good price point compared to concrete or fiberglass, it always boils down to the liner. It's not a matter of when it's going to leak. It's not a matter of if it's going to leak. It's a matter of when it's going to leak. So, in this climate, if I weren't a pool builder and I were shopping for a pool, I would probably stay away from a vinyl pool. Unless, you're fully aware going into it that there's at risk that, that vinyl liner could get damaged any year, whether it's the first year or the 20th year that it's installed. There's a lot of different things that can affect the life of the liner, but not to dive too deep, there's gauges and mills and different thicknesses in certain areas. So there's a lot of little things that go into the long-term or longevity of a pool liner. But the biggest thing is water chemistry, and then winter. Winter wreaks havoc on pool liners up here.
And that ice, you described it earlier when we were chatting, is that as it begins to melt, well, ice doesn't melt perfectly smooth, or at least it sometimes it doesn't. Even if you look in like your glass, your ice water, the ice is not melting smoothly. It's got tiny little ridges on it, and you're saying it's the movement of that ice within the pool shell that can cause little holes in the liner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be a small pinhole that you might not even see. It could be a large tear. And if this time of year, like right now, we're getting a bit of a heat wave. It's supposed to be like 40 degrees this weekend, so pools might start thawing out. And what can happen is if that pinhole is kind of frozen or plugged right now, as it thaws, water can start draining out of it, and then your liner, as the water empties out of the pool, your liner can start to shrink, and there could be other issues that may lead to it not being repairable. Whereas if it would have happened, if you would have got like a pinhole in summer, you could maybe put a patch on it or seal it in some manner. But right now is kind of the worst part of the year when everything is just starting to thaw out for the season.
The problem is a little slow rolling with bigger consequences on the back end. So talk about the installation of a vinyl liner pool. So let's say I'm a homeowner and I've got to stick to the lower end of a budget. I want something simple in the ground. I'm going to pick a standard shape. I'm going with a vinyl pool. What should I expect my builder to do for installation best practices so that my pool has the most structural integrity possible?
Well, the biggest thing is to make sure that there's some way to get groundwater out from under and around the pool. Regardless of what pool type it is, concrete, no matter what pool is in the ground, you still need some way to get that groundwater out. And with vinyl pools, it's kind of an afterthought with most builders. So, but when we used to build them, we would use an 8-inch standpipe, just like on our fiberglass pools, and we'd get that as deep as we can. We'd put stone underneath the bottom of the pool, then we'd put our poolcrete over it. So we've got a way to get that groundwater out from underneath the pool and pump it out come spring. Like right now, we're going to have a thaw probably this weekend, so people really need to get out and start checking their standpipes, and if they need to, stick a submersible pump in there and start pumping some of this groundwater out, because all this, we've got like 2 feet of snow out here, and it's going to start melting really quick, and that could fill up that void in the clean stone around a pool, an in-ground pool, pretty quick. So that's something that you really have to monitor, regardless of the pool type in spring too. But that's something that usually gets overlooked with the vinyl pool. Most builders just kind of backfill with whatever material they have laying around. They might not use clean stone. They might use sand or whatever dirt that they have left over from the pool dig to fill that in, maybe save a few bucks. But it's a big oversight.
I was going to ask why you think that is. Like, is that a more common oversight with vinyl or fiberglass, or is it just a common oversight for, builders in general?
I'd say from what I've seen, it's a bigger oversight with vinyl pools than it is with fiberglass. It's pretty common knowledge that you do need some clean stone around that pool. And if a fiberglass builder's not doing that, they probably shouldn't be in business, to be honest. But yeah, it's definitely something that's more commonly overlooked with a vinyl pool than any other type of pool.
Okay. And the stone backfill versus dirt or sand or something else, it's just allowing for that groundwater to move around. But you're saying the most critical piece, as with all pool types, is the standpipe or the sump pipe, depending on where you are in the country. It might have a different name, but the ability to put a submersible pump below the bottom of the pool in order to pump the water out. And what you're doing there is just tell folks what you're accomplishing by removing that groundwater.
You're basically removing what's called hydrostatic pressure, and what that is, it's the pressure underneath and around the sides of the pool that really want to push the pool up out of the ground. And if you can alleviate that, with fiberglass, it's pretty simple. Concrete is a little trickier. Vinyl pools, it's a little bit trickier too, but overall, basically what you need to do is just get that groundwater away from the pool to prevent that hydrostatic pressure from building up. If you don't, we tend to see a lot of people say that fiberglass pools float. Well, yeah, that's possible, but every single type of pool can float. A vinyl liner can float, fiberglass pool can float, and even a concrete pool. We've seen several instances up here where a full, 18 by 36 concrete pool comes 3-4 feet out of the ground. So
That's
it doesn't
crazy.
matter. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I was going to say, specific to vinyl pools, like what happens if you get too much hydrostatic pressure? A fiberglass can pop up and float. A concrete pool can pop up and float. What happens with a vinyl pool if there's too much hydrostatic pressure?
The whole liner can float. It can even come out of the pool. Sometimes it'll be just as small as like what looks like a blister or like a bulge on the bottom of the pool floor. Sometimes it's so bad that the whole liner can actually come right up to the surface of the pool. In that case, it's usually there's a hole in the liner that's allowing the water that was above the liner to kind of seep down and then push everything up. But I mean, it can get pretty bad. The good thing is if it's a newer liner and it's still relatively soft, you can possibly pump that groundwater out and reset it without having to be replaced. But oftentimes when it's bad enough, it can rip out around your skimmer, it can rip out around return fittings. There's just so much pressure underneath there that it can do a lot of damage pretty quick to a vinyl pool.
Jeez. Well, that's good knowledge. One, backfill with stone, give the water a place to go and the ability to move around the pool. And then two, you should expect a standpipe or a sump pipe to be used so the groundwater can be used or removed rather and managed. So by now, no doubt you've picked up on the prevailing preferences for pool types that can better withstand harsh winters. But let's take a look at how fiberglass specifically weathers the cold temperatures. Let's talk about fiberglass now. This is your specialty, and how does ground frost, frozen water, affect the pool shell itself? Because it's a one piece that's popped off of a mold for those who are listening, and then it's flipped over, and then that becomes the pool. That's what's placed in the ground. So talk about how frost and ice impact the pool shell, and then talk about best practices. For the installation. What should people expect if they're getting a fiberglass pool?
Well, if it's installed properly, I think fiberglass is the ideal pool for this climate. It's one piece. It's designed to be flexible. You're going to get a decent amount of movement in it. But if it's installed correctly, you really shouldn't get much movement at all in the pool, regardless of the climate. But like I said, with the vinyl pools and any type of pool, you need to have some type of clean stone as far as backfill. As far as your base, you need the sump pipe or standpipe, whatever you want to call it, just to be able to get the groundwater out. And if you have those two key elements, that's 96% of the problem right there. And as long as you can keep an eye on the groundwater when it comes to like spring, like right now when we're starting to get a thaw, as long as you keep an eye on that and make sure that you pump that groundwater out and the water outside of the pool never exceeds the water that's in the pool, you should be in good shape regardless. But to me, fiberglass just makes so much sense. That's why we decided to just strictly build fiberglass pools. It's the ideal pool for this climate.
Okay. And how long have you guys been installing fiberglass exclusively?
Exclusively, probably since 2000... probably at least 7 years. But before that, we were doing vinyl. We were doing basically a little bit of everything. But once we started selling the River Pools brand, you guys showed us how, it makes much more sense to just focus on one thing and be the very best at that. And that's the route that we took because we felt that fiberglass pool is just the best option for just about everybody, unless you want something custom or extremely unique or a shape that is not available in fiberglass.
Yeah. Of course, I love fiberglass. River is a fiberglass exclusive brand, and many companies find success at finding the one thing to perfect and excel at. So, and just to note, fiberglass pools, I often hear Fiberglass is not suited for cold climates. I hear that specifically, when in fact they're manufactured and they're installed much farther north than you, like well into Canada. Fiberglass pools are installed and are obviously a viable product. That far north on the North American continent. So let's talk about yes. Despite the many rumors online about how fiberglass pools perform in cold weather, they can indeed handle cold, harsh environments quite well. But what about concrete? They also can do well in these environments, provided your builder takes a few extra steps. Let's switch gears one more time and let's talk about concrete pools. And again, how frost on the ground, the water itself freezing, how do those impact the shell? And, again, for those listening or watching, what should they expect their builder to do in terms of best practices during installation so that pool has structural integrity for as long as possible?
Well, the first and probably the most important thing with the concrete pool is to have some type of soil testing done to make sure that the soil in the given area can bear the load of the concrete pool, because concrete pools are much, much heavier than any other type of pool. You've got the weight of the water, and then you've also got a ton of weight in just the concrete of the pool and the steel and everything else that goes into it. So with a concrete pool, you have to be much more diligent and make sure that the soil can bear the load of the pool itself. When you don't, that's when we tend to see some of the issues of pools kind of moving, because of the frost or settling or something like that, because there is some ground movement, a little bit of ground movement up here in the clay when the frost sets in and stuff like that. If you don't make sure that you have soil testing done so it can bear the load, you might get some movement. And that's typically when we see winter damage from pools where, a couple steps might have been skipped or missed during the installation process. And then also the way that the concrete pools are manufactured, you need a more robust pool shell up here. You need more steel or thicker steel in certain areas than you might in, like, say, Arizona, where you get no frost. It's nice dry soil. So everything has to be much more, I guess, beefed up. I mean, it's just got to be a much more solid pool, thicker bond beam, thicker walls, thicker floor. Everything's just got to be built, a little bit better to withstand the frost up here with the concrete pool.
So you should expect your contractor to get do some soil testing. How do you? So that would be one thing. They're either going to do that or not, and if they're not, that could be a red flag. But how do you know that they're the average homeowner is not going to understand the size of the rebar or the steel. They're not going to know how thick the pool should be. But just some tips there. What should people be looking for? Information from their builder to indicate that they are indeed using the right steel in the right spot, that the pool is being shot at the correct thickness, or can you share anything there? And for the sake of homeowners who aren't in this day to day, we'll keep the terminology pretty simple if you can.
Yeah, basically each concrete pool should be designed by an engineer based for the soil conditions, the weather conditions up here. So when you're looking at different models that are available from a concrete pool builder, ask to see the engineering diagram with the stamp on it to certify that it's designed to structurally withstand the climate up here. So that's a big one. A lot of guys don't do it. A lot of guys will just dig a hole and put your rebar in and rent a concrete pumper and just, shoot the gunite in there and plaster the pool and be done with it. Those guys are the ones that are going to run into some issues. And generally speaking, I would say out of our competitors that do concrete pools, they're all very good at what they do up here. And we rarely see any damage from, pools moving or stuff like that, especially the established companies that have been around for a long time. So, But seeing engineer stamps, designs from an engineer, and then soil testing is the other big one too, is if you can get two of those, I think you're in pretty decent hands for the most part.
Yeah. If your builder is leaning on, third-party professionals to verify soil type and the load the soil can bear, and then also, designing the right pool specs for the soil that you have. That's really good. That's really good to lean on if concrete is indeed what you're thinking about in a colder climate. With soil testing and an engineered plan, concrete pools are indeed a viable option for an area that experiences harsh winters, especially if your top priority is choosing the pool type that offers the most flexibility when it comes to customizing the shape and size. Before parting, I wanted to offer Michael one last opportunity to share any parting words of wisdom. Are we missing anything? What else would you like to share?
Definitely visit the River Pools website. Watch your videos on YouTube. 2 minutes in the pool is priceless. You're pretty fair to all three types of pools across the board. So I think it's something that just about anybody could get some use out of, and it's definitely worth spending, an afternoon watching a bunch of your videos to learn about the differences of the pools and the different costs and basically anything you can about pools. It's all there. So I would definitely recommend checking that out first. I think as far as durability goes, with the three different pool types, I think we pretty much cover everything pretty good. But I just want to hit home on vinyl. It's I don't want to bash it, but at the same time, people need realistic expectations that vinyl, it's probably not the ideal pool for this climate up here. If you're in a southern state or maybe even the southern part of Wisconsin where we don't get as much cold, it may be a better option for you down there. But as far as my experience, they just don't hold up as well as fiberglass or other concrete pools. And part of that could be maintenance, maintaining the proper water level in the pool. But it could also just be a freak thing where the pool thaws out wrong and, you get a little bit of damage to the liner and there you go. Now you need a whole, $7,000 to $10,000 liner and nobody wants that. So I guess the big thing is just trying to manage people's expectations and making sure that they stay up on their maintenance and don't forget about the pool after it's winterized. That's a big thing.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the kind words. And thank you again for your time. I know those listening or those watching will appreciate this, particularly if you're up in a colder part of the country, as this will certainly explain a lot of things as you're considering a pool for your backyard. If you're beginning to plan a pool for your backyard, head on over to riverpoolsandspas.com, where you can find decision-making tools, including a pricing estimator, and have immediate access to hundreds of articles. Everything designed to help you make the right decisions, the best decisions, long before you break ground in your backyard. I'm Cristian with River Pools. You've been watching or listening to the Pool Guides podcast.